Let me give you an example from my own district of a
Please,
consequence
yes, I'd
that
love to hear
might occur as a result of this bill. In the district that I represent, the city of Fort Worth has an area of town called the medical district. In that medical district are 5 or 6 hospitals. They're all congregated fairly closely together, and actually the Planned Parenthood abortion facility that exists in the city of Fort Worth is within a 30-mile radius of all of those hospitals. Let's say that under this requirement, a doctor who provides services at the Planned Parenthood facility has admitting privileges at Harris Hospital. That's one of the large hospitals that we have there, Texas Health Resources Harris Hospital. But let's say that the woman is a Medicaid client, and she presents with a problem at John Peter Smith Hospital. And this doctor, he's satisfied the requirement. He's got admitting privileges within 30 miles of the clinic, but she appears at JPS because she's a Medicaid patient. How is she somehow safer?
I believe the fact that that doctor has another level of review, that they are qualified, he or she is qualified to have privileges at a hospital. Whether it is to that specific hospital or another, the fact that they have to go through that review to be able to have those admitting privileges, I think, is important.
Does it concern you at all, Senator Hager, that under this particular requirement, fewer doctors would have the capability of performing this service? Is that actually the intent of this particular section of the legislation?
No, the intent is to make sure that those doctors have that extra level of review and that they're qualified doctors to be able to perform those procedures.
Are you aware that after the sonogram law went into place, after the last legislative session, because it required physicians to come 2 days in a row to these facilities, and I think that was very purposeful, the requirement that it be the same physician, because it required that that physician be the same one for those 2 days in a row, that there was actually a fairly significant decrease in the number of physicians who were able to practice in that arena.
My intent is not to decrease the number, but to increase the quality and the mainstream physicians, their care.
Does it concern you at all that by creating greater and greater obstacles for doctors who practice in this arena, that women will have a lower level of access to this care in the state of Texas?
I think of it both as a level of quantity of care and of quality of care.
Senator Hager, were you aware that in Mississippi, when this same requirement went into effect, all 7 local hospitals that were within the prescribed distance of an abortion clinic refused to grant those privileges?
Were those, I don't recall offhand, were those secular hospitals, or were what types of hospitals were there?
I don't know the answer to that, but that indeed was what happened.
Okay.
And my concern, Senator Hager, and I think the concern of others, is that that's actually the intent, that with each of the provisions of this bill and the obstacles that are created by virtue of this bill, that the ability for women to access, as rare as we all hope it will be, safe and legal abortion services in the state of Texas is going to be severely constrained.
Well, I want, my purpose is to increase that standard and that quality, and I do hope, at least from the 20-week portion of the bill, by decreasing the number of abortions in the state of Texas, I think that's important with the fetal pain portion, and the other portions, I think it's important to increase the quality of care.
Senator Hager, I'm going to ask you just a few more questions.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
On the ambulatory surgical center requirements. And I want to go through the list that we were provided and that we were reading from a moment ago.
The one pager?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And I'm going to ask you a fairly repetitive question, and maybe we can just take this as a group, but let's just start with the physical plant requirements.
Okay.
Are you aware of any documented incident in the state of Texas where a woman's health and safety of a woman was compromised as a consequence of not having a surgery room that is the size required in this provision?
I have not had a documented case come to me as to one specific line item here to the right for the ASC standards, nor have I had one to me for the abortion facilities to the left. So we can go through each single one, but I don't have a case that's right here in front of me that says this is the specific one reason that there was the complication. But I do believe the cumulative effect of having all of these higher standards is important. We can go through each one if you want, but that's the answer in totality.
I'm going to read them.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Please go right ahead.
There's an increased surgery room size, increased hallway width, airflow system, firewalls, showers, male and female locker rooms, janitor closets, a boiler system, autoclave, a vacuum pump, a backup generator, safety codes, and a pharmacy. Are any of those on that physical plant requirement? Are you aware that the lack of any of those in existence in the abortion clinic setting today has created a problem for the health and safety of women? Is there a single documented incidence that you can point to where the failure to provide any of those items led to the compromised safety and health of women in the state of Texas?
I'm not going to point to that documented case, whether it's the showers, the firewalls, or janitor closets of those physical plant, nor the non or the other side with the abortion facilities. But again, I do believe that in the totality, those higher standards will create a much higher quality of care.
You believe that, but we're talking about
from
doing
what
something.
we have heard in different testimonies, Senator.
I'm asking you about documented incidences.
I've heard you
Back
document.
to the
I've heard that
evidence
question. Yes,
again.
ma'am. Document. Specific case. I've heard that. Yes.
Well, I mean, we're asking that dramatic changes be made, and extreme impediments in the views of some, I fall in that view, extreme impediments to women in the state of Texas being able to access this care in the future, and we're creating these impediments, and yet, as many hearings as we've had, as many conversations as we've had on the Senate floor and on the House floor, no one can point to a single incident where a woman's health or safety was compromised because one of these things was missing from the physical plant of the abortion clinic setting in the state of Texas today.
And I would disagree that these are going to be, I think, and I forget the qualifier word that you said, but the impediment to having a quality of care. I do not believe that these standards are going to be that significant impediment, but I do believe that they are going to increase that quality of care, Senator.
Senator Hager, I have in front of me something that was put together by the Texas Policy Evaluation Project, and that
Would you
project,
describe it? Because I don't
yes,
have that with me, please.
It's titled How Abortion Restrictions Would Impact 5 Areas of Texas.
Okay.
This was a group that did this study.
I remember the young lady's testimony, and I remember seeing it, but I don't have it with me. But I remember her talking about it Monday. So go ahead, yes, ma'am, please.
And again, we differ on our opinions about the time period, the expense, and the ability for clinics to convert to the ambulatory surgical center requirements. But I thought this was fairly compelling. In the Beaumont-Port Arthur metropolitan area, the closest ASC is located in Houston. It's approximately 90 miles from Beaumont. This would require that women would have to make at least 2 visits to Houston, adding about 6 hours of travel time to the process. Maybe that doesn't sound as much of an an impediment as one might be concerned about. But let's talk about the next one, Corpus Christi, Kingsville. The closest ASC is located in San Antonio, approximately 140 miles from Corpus Christi. And the information here states that it would add about 8 hours of travel time to the process of obtaining an abortion, requiring at least 2 visits to San Antonio. In El Paso, the closest ASC is located in San Antonio, approximately 560 miles away. This would add about 32 hours of travel time to the process of obtaining an abortion. And some women, of course, might have to spend the night in a hotel, which of course adds to the travel costs that she would have to endure. In the lower Rio Grande Valley, the closest ASC is located in San Antonio. It's 235 miles from McAllen, 250 miles from Harlingen. Under the proposed legislation, women would have to make at least 2 visits to San Antonio, adding about 16 hours of travel time to the process. And in Midland, Odessa, the closest ambulatory surgical center is located in Dallas, approximately 340 miles away, adding about 20 hours of travel time to the process. Also, of course, probably requiring the necessity that a woman would have to spend the night and the expense in a hotel. Does that concern you at all, that some women actually would literally be unable, because of their financial and their family circumstances, to be able to access this care for the purpose of having to go to an ambulatory surgical center that we've not been able to provide a single documented piece of information creates a safer environment for her?
I know that study, and I remember seeing it, and I don't have it in front of me, but I appreciate you going through each part of it, the 5 different regions. I remembered some of the regions in my head, but not specifically where the case study started from. That's also under the assumption that all the clinics will close and no other clinics will exist other than these current ASCs, which, again, I do not believe that premise. Do I want to see someone travel a long ways? No. The same as I know today, not just in Texas, but in the entire continental United States, 87% of all counties do not have an abortion clinic in those counties. And so, unfortunately, rural care and access, which I represent a large rural district, people having quality of care in a lot of variety of areas, I think, is a concern. Whether they have a hospital that has the needs that they meet, or an ASC, or a local doctor's office. I think Senator Rodriguez, if I remember, he was talking in committee in part of the district he took from Senator Uresti, they have one doctor. So my point is, the quality and access to care in rural Texas, it is a concern to me in totality, but I do not agree to the premise that those would be the only clinics that will meet the ASC standards, Senator.
Certainly you would agree that this isn't going to help the situation that exists today in Senator Rodriguez's district.
I don't think it's going to go to I forget the exact language that you used earlier, the worst case scenario, to where only those are the only 4 clinics in existence either.
Senator Hager, as we've been talking about this particular issue, a number of people who are supportive of this piece of legislation, who are in the legislature, have communicated the fact that they're very pleased that the consequence of this particular provision in the bill will force the closure of many of the clinics that are currently providing service in Texas today, and that in fact abortion services in Texas will be much harder to come by. Have you heard those statements made?
I have not had a member come to me and say that to me directly. If they have to you, I have not had them come say that directly to me.
I would suggest perhaps you read a little bit in terms of things that people have said in the media.
I've been reading a lot in the last 3 weeks of all this.
In the media, on social media, and other places. And of course, those of us who are against this bill believe that the provisions, particularly taken as a whole, are creating an environment that truly does put women's health at risk in Texas, and that the worst case scenario, or even the half of the worst case scenario in this particular provision of the bill, is going to create a very, very real problem. And I will end just by reminding you of a sentence in a letter that we received from people who know this arena far better than you or I, people who should be left to make the decision-making in this arena in terms of what creates a safe standard of care for women in Texas, and that's the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. And they close a letter that they wrote to us on June the 12th by saying, "We fear that excessive regulation leading to clinic closures will significantly risk the health of women. The closure of freestanding clinics could lead to a resurgence of illegal abortion and the complications thereof, including septic abortion, hemorrhage, and maternal death. This would represent a significant step backward for the health status of Texas women." Senator Whitmire read to you earlier from a report about what's already happening in the border areas of Texas today, in large part because services are not available to them. And some believe, and some of these reports actually propose, have had a lot to do with the sonogram bill that was put in place last session and the impediments that that bill alone has created. I'm very concerned that added together with that, this bill is creating a situation where women in Texas today not only will not be made safer, but they will absolutely be at risk of their health. And I stand very strongly against it. Thank you, Senator Hager.
Yes, thank you, Senator Davis. I appreciate your passion and dedication.